Make some noise for Laura Vandervoort! And keep it coming, make those hands move, make some noise. You know where's Lois Lane on Smallville? Erica Durance! And the first LL in Clark's life, of course you know her as Lana Lang. Make some noise for Kristin Kreuk! The superwomen of Smallville, right here in Austin. Are we missing a chair? Oh wow, okay.
That's
okay.
classic. That's classic.
We'll make this work. Welcome, guys. Welcome to Austin. How's the con going so far for you?
Hi.
Good. It's great now. Can you hear us?
Hi, guys.
I mean, I'm really loud anyway, but you can hear.
Well, we're happy to have you here. And they've got some questions, but I kind of want to dive in. Like, first off, like, it's so fascinating. This show was a hit before sort of the market was just saturated with super shows, with comic book based type shows. For you, like at this time in your career, working in this genre, was it something that gave you certain tools to add to your toolkit, like working with effects, working with sort of these fantastic plots? How did that sort of shape and contribute to each of you as actors?
Yeah, I mean, it was huge. We used so much green screen. We would do stuff that was purely on a green screen stage, which I had never done before, and which I have used since. Just the world that we existed in, which was fantasy, allowed for a skill set to build that was translatable across pretty much everything I've done, including fight skills, just like everything. So it was amazing.
Yeah. Do you want to add to that?
Well, I think as well, in this particular type of world, we had to be ready for whatever they were going to throw our way, which also can help you in any other job, because usually the other jobs are very, depending on what you pick, it's specific. You're just this one thing, and that's what you do all the time. Whereas, we were laughing about this before. We played witches. We were possessed. We had superpowers. We had superpowers. We did wire
Didn't you
work.
wrestle people?
I wrestled people. I was constantly throwing down with somebody.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Laura?
You did a lot of wire work.
Yeah, I mean, as Supergirl, there was a lot of wire work, green screen, and all of that. That was my first foray into that, and I've done a lot of it since with Bitten. V was an entirely green screen show. We had no props, nothing. Yeah, it was just tape.
And the big
so
thing
it prepared me for that, I guess.
Yeah, the big thing about green screen too is it's just so much of it you have to create in your own mind, and it's shocking because you go in there and depending on how you work, like I need to know technically how it is being seen, how big something is really important. You don't want to overreact to something and then have them in post make it really small, and you're like, wow, I'm really scared of this, but it's super friendly looking. Like you have to have a team that works with you in that, but it also teaches you how much you can depend on what they do technically. And you don't have to be so nervous. Like when I first came on the show, I'd be so nervous. Like, what do you want me to do? And I have to jump off this. And how is that even going to look cool? And then you see it later, and you're like, wow, it's amazing.
Sometimes we find that we're doing scenes with tennis balls.
Yeah.
That's very common, especially in the genre, to not have anything in front of you but a tennis ball, and you have to like cry over your mother's death or whatever it may be, and you're looking at like basically Wilson, So, I mean, it worked for Tom Hanks,
Right. Well, yeah, it sharpens your skills, I guess. It really forces you to bring that game when you have so limited things to interact with. Is there also sort of this kinship, especially amongst women, like this kinship working in genre, because you guys can kind of trade notes and have sort of, inside language about this world that maybe other actors out there don't necessarily have? Or no?
Like having to wear outfits you can't move in?
I guess that would be part of it, yeah. Like what goes on.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, for the seasons I was on the show, I was in like short jean shorts and a crop top trying to do stunts. So as a woman, yeah, you've got to find a way around that, but also try to voice, your opinion about maybe changing things up to make it more comfortable for yourself and for what you're doing, which I think back when we were doing the show, or especially myself, I was scared to voice my opinion. Mm-hmm. Now I'm not. If it's right for me and it makes me comfortable, it's important. But I think back then I just wanted to please everybody.
Yeah, I had a similar experience too, but Smallville was where I learned to find a voice. Mm-hmm. And it was hard. It took a long time, and it wasn't easy, and I used to try and take calls with producers, and I would only do it on the phone, because every time I voiced my opinion about something when I was 19 or 20, I'd just start crying. And I felt so alone in that experience. So it was so hard to gain that voice, and now that I have it, it's so empowering and easier to support other women that I work with, younger women especially, who are coming in and who are very tentative and scared and feel like they're replaceable, just to tell them that they really aren't, and that they can say no or find alternative solutions to things, and that doesn't make them a problem. It makes them strong.
Yeah. Well, that's an excellent point, because it's not just finding your voice; it's helping other people find their voice, and hopefully affecting the overall industry. So now, when you step onto the set of Supergirl, do you find that that impact has been felt, like that it is an easier time for actors, and specifically for female actors on set?
One of the things I noticed, and again, it sounds like I'm speaking to the surface level, but it's not. But it's what you see right away. So, I think it was Ginger Rogers that says we do everything a man does except backwards and in heels, and we still have to go out and then do that. And I remember being on Smallville, and we'd be running away from zombies, running up hills, running outside. I'm wearing 4-inch heels and a spaghetti dress, and God bless Tom, he's got his hiker boots and 5 layers of clothes on, and I'm like, I'm glad you're warm, and I'm freezing, and there's all these other things that you have to continually keep doing, and I'm not complaining, it's just a fact of the way it is. And then when I went on to Supergirl, what was very interesting is Melissa here is playing Supergirl. She was wearing flat boots. I hadn't seen that in all the different things. She's like, I am not going to do any of those things, and anything I can't move properly in. And so it sounds like it's inconsequential, but it's not.
It's a huge change from when we started.
from when we started, and even what her outfit is, and what she's wearing, and what she's representing, and what they're focusing on. So yeah.
Gone is like the short shorts and the crop top or whatever. Yeah.
I mean, it just shows you how far we've come.
Yeah.
The first thing I wanted to do was burn my wardrobe as soon as
not the S, but
I never had the S.
Oh shoot, you didn't even get
I didn't have the, no, Erica, come on.
I watched it. I promise I watched the show.
That's good, because we're going to quiz you now on every single episode of the show, both ones you were in, the episodes you weren't in. Yes. Actually, that's a good segue to audience question. Hi, right up front. What's your question?
Oh, hello. Oh.
Hi.
Hi. Well, first off, thank you, all of you guys, for coming to Austin. Fans, we love you guys, and you guys are so nice and wonderful. And I wasn't say earlier. I told y'all that I showed y'all my S symbol, and I showed Michael earlier, and I wasn't expecting his reaction, because I thought he was just gonna be serious. But my honest question is, is it cool if y'all could teach me the Canadian national anthem?
Really?
I did not see that one coming. A lot of times I can predict where the question's going. You, sir, tip of the hat.
Okay. I'm feeling stressed.
Are there any other Canadians in the room?
I'm not going to actually make them sing the anthem, but I'm willing to bet that they have a better grasp on the Canadian anthem than Americans have on on our national anthem on average. I could be wrong. I don't know. But not going to ask you to sing, but do you think you know? Okay.
There you go.
I was really trying to give you an out on this.
Laura's going for it.
Okay, there you go.
That's the beginning.
Also very Canadian of us, because we started it, didn't stand, and didn't finish it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean we don't love our country.
I love your country.
That was awesome.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for giving me a surprising question today. That's good.
Yeah, change it up.
No pressure, sir, but that was pretty good. What's your question?
Hi. Thank you for coming. Question could be for any of y'all. Now today they kind of what you mentioned earlier about the old days and today now everyone's sharing their workout routines and diets and stuff. When y'all were shooting, I'm just curious to know. All of you had some action sequences and fight scenes. Did y'all, I guess, pre-train, or what were your routines like?
Yeah, any training routines or anything?
Anyone? I mean, mine's really boring. I just worked out. That's all. It's exciting.
It's good and important.
I grew up doing martial arts, so I started when I was 7. So I had my 2nd degree black belt when I started
She's
Smallville.
like a real, yeah.
Yeah. No, I enjoy a good fight. That sounds horrible.
Very,
You know what I mean. So I had to do a lot of the stunts on that, and that came in handy, my martial arts background.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I did a lot of, I just did a lot of running. I did a lot of yoga, a lot of stretching, and I worked out my aggression on a kickboxing bag at home. And,
Did you do a Taibo?
no, I didn't. But
Okay.
okay, shh, you're not supposed to tell them. So yeah, and then of course, whenever we would work on the day, they would bring in people that knew how to do those things. That's the other thing that we're not always afforded the time. You talk about people that say, "Oh, I'm going to decide to be a fighter," and they go off for a year and they study it, or they transplant themselves to another country. You don't have that when you're shooting a TV series. We're shooting this today. Here's the man or woman that knows how to do it. Come over here. You've got you're getting mic'd at the same time. They're like, "Let's show you some fight moves," and you try to work it out as fast as you can. But we definitely relied on people that are incredibly talented and skilled, and then we worked with them. And
That's awesome.
yeah.
There you go. Thank you. Hello.
Hi. You guys played some iconic characters when you guys were playing your individual roles, and you guys did an amazing job. They stand as my favorite versions of those characters to date. But given that when you guys stepped into those roles, the state of social media and YouTube comic book shows critiques weren't what they are now, would you guys be more nervous about playing that iconic role today than you were when you first started it?
I actually think I'd be less nervous. I was thinking about this the other day. I remember when I was cast, and it was a really big deal that I didn't have red hair. It was a really, really big deal. And it wasn't even a question about being half Asian. Like, we just pretended that I wasn't. That was just what we did. But now I feel like you could change the character to be more representative of a non-white background, and it wouldn't be it would be a big deal in some circles, but as a whole it'd be something more accepted, and I love that. I think that's pretty awesome, although there is a lot more pressure.
Yeah.
I find for myself, I tend to live in a bit of a rabbit hole. Like I have a very small existence outside of coming to work in these forums, and so I don't really pay attention to a lot of the stuff that's going on, and even in social media. I'm a little bit I'm not great at it. I'm learning from
You're
the ladies,
great.
but I'm getting better. Yeah. But I wasn't. Kristen's the one that actually got me on social, because I wouldn't do it.
Me of
you know
all
what I mean?
people.
I know, which is highly ironic. My point being, even when I came on to do the show, I really kind of blocked out, I didn't know how intense that was, to be playing that character. And then I lucked out because I was playing a character, and the incarnation of her was earlier in her life. Although at the beginning I was in a lot of trouble for even being part of Clark's world, and the world might have exploded had we seen each other,
Totally.
that sort of thing. So that was really stressful at the beginning, but it also allowed her to kind of find her way and be clumsy, and it worked with the character, and it worked with the storytelling. So my personality type, I do tend to avoid a lot of the stuff that even we were talking about going to see a movie earlier, and you're like, what did you're telling me about all the critics said, and I'm like, oh, really? I really like that. So I kind of live a little bit in my own bubble.
I agree, and I'm very similar to Erica in that I like to be in my own bubble. I also think it's great that so many things have changed in this day and age, but I do think I would have felt more pressure had I been cast as Supergirl now, with the social media forums, people hiding behind screens, making comments. That would be a really unhealthy environment for me to have been cast in my first American series and a superhero. So there was already pressure back in the day when none of this existed that I put on myself, and we're great at putting pressures on ourselves. So to have had that in addition to it, I don't know if I could have handled it. So, Melissa, all of the superheroes, everything we have today, they're dealing with so much more pressure than we did, I think.
Absolutely.
Just publicly.
Well, because the show kind of straddled this line of before social media and then after social media, really kind of exploding in the 04-05 time. Did you notice, and I guess Kristin, why don't you start with this, did you notice sort of like, was there a shift in the middle where it's like, oh, now you can't really be actors without, or do a whole lot of things in the media without having some social media footprint.
It's like a necessary evil.
Yeah, it's like, was there a push to like, oh, now you guys got to get on social, or oh, hey, you need to pay attention to this stuff now?
You know what? I think I missed it entirely. I don't think I got any social media until after I left Smallville. Yeah. And I don't believe anyone else on the show did either.
I mean, we were still the show where the people weren't allowed to have phones on set, to
really?
take pictures. Like when I was working there at the end of it, and we were trying to keep something under wraps, it was the obvious. Like it was the opposite to what it is now. It was, don't let people in to see it. Create the hype by not having it. So anybody who was working on the set, any background players that we had, anything, they weren't allowed to have their phones. So it was completely
That's fascinating, though, because that also means that it was established enough that enough people were carrying around, around 2007, I guess, is when everybody started carrying around like smartphones,
Yeah. Well, now it's sort of expected as well to see behind the scenes videos that your actors are posting.
You have to do the opposite.
You have to be more involved all the time. Yeah, it certainly wasn't like that when Smallville was on. We just missed it.
So with that now, when you work on television, is it feel like there's less of the ability to have an off switch since someone is always doing behind the scenes, or someone's always trying to do an Instagram story on set, or there's this whole social media marketing team? Does it feel more like you're working all the time?
Well, I'll just answer quickly because the show I'm on right now is a drama that doesn't have a ton of publicity with a department that's not super savvy when it comes to social media. So we do like little things every once in a while, but it's very clear that that's what we're doing on that day. And so it doesn't overwhelm me. But I imagine because these guys work on, really big shows, I imagine it's more present there.
I mean, just as an example, I have a new show coming out on Netflix, and the publicity person called me to ask me to go into my Instagram and find out the demographic ratio of male versus female and what ages they are that follow me.
Really?
Yeah.
Whereas you're like, I would like to learn my lines.
Yeah, and I didn't even know you could do that. Now I'm aware of it and I see it, and it's just another thing to think about, but that's how they're going to promote my character to those demographics. They're going to gear it to that. That's crazy.
Fascinating. I wonder if they go another season, if they'll change the character. I wonder.
Yeah. It's just a whole different, and they'll cast based on numbers.
What I don't like about that either is, we all, we all know that there's a sense of being a product, and that's okay, and you buy into that so that you get the opportunity to work because we love to create. So I'm not complaining at all, but what I find interesting is in casting and many of all those other things, they're now making decisions based on social media accounts that aren't based in reality. So then what do you do? So you're going in, like even last year there was a couple of scenarios where I was up against some people and we were, and I thought that's not the truth, but their social media platform was so much better and so much more slick that it looked like a better, like the experience level wasn't as much, they hadn't done as much as I had, and I'm not talking about, it's just weird. It's weird. I know we already live in a world where you don't actually have to have a resume to get a big job, right? But that being said,
we're also getting older.
I'm saying it could be anyone I'm talking about. God.
But it's the influencer influence on the media, like, on jobs, that people that have a big following but not necessarily the talent to support it get jobs.
Yeah.
It is a fact. Yes. Sorry.
Really
That was a good
long
question.
answer.
That was my fault. I interjected, but you got all that. It was really good though. I like insight. I mean, look, I enjoy the Rosenbaum panel, but it's nice actually asking questions.
We're not doing diarrhea jokes, guys.
Yeah, no.
Oh wait, I saved some time at the end for that though.
Just know we're supposed to do that. I don't know.
Hi.
The fact that we're actually able to speak on this panel is amazing.
There was like a series of multiple sentences and insights and
Crazy.
I know, it was wild. Hi, how are you?
Thank you all for coming. You all as actors are the blueprint for the strong female characters on the CW and this genre. So I just want to thank you all for coming. It's a dream come true to see you guys. But I was just curious, in your personal life for each of you, who was your sense of like growing up and watching film and TV? Who your favorite feminist, strong female character was growing up that kind of helped inspire you to be the strong characters that you were on Smallville?
Can I answer outside of television?
Yeah, film, TV, whatever.
Because I wasn't allowed to watch TV for a long time, and I was trying to think, in Star Trek, The Next Generation, was there someone in particular? No. But honestly, Anne Shirley.
All right.
And Joe Marsh. Two female characters who inspired me so much, and they were outcasts, and they were weird, and they were writers, and they chose life paths that were uncommon, and they inspired me fully.
Wow, that's good. Hard to follow. No. Well, I don't. But I was gonna say I kind of have a similar thing. I grew up in a world where we weren't allowed to watch TV, and so when you talked about somebody being your strong kind of female role model, it's my mother and my gran, who's almost 98 years old.
Wow.
And so the actual sassiness and spice and spunk actually comes from my grandmother, who is super, super badass and cool and awesome, and she's still kicking, and she still makes her thing she does is she knits lap quilts for veterans, and then that's all she does all week, and then she goes and she visits them and she does all that kind of stuff, and so it's kind of more of the people that were closest to me, and then my mother keeping my head on my shoulders, and just a very strong, amazing person. And even as I finished, and I was doing another show, and I was worried about superfluous things. I was worried about things I couldn't control. I had gotten pregnant, and I was doing these shows, and I was like, Mom, I can't control what's happening to my body. It's happening in film. Everybody's seeing it. I can't be one of those cute little pregnant ladies. Everything's happening here. And she goes, good, you're gonna get a sense of humor about yourself. Which is true. She's like, you gotta get over that stuff. So, yeah, long-winded, but.
That's great.
For myself, there really wasn't anyone on television. I mean, I always say Sarah Michelle Gellar as Buffy because that was my first. It's not deep, but please. In terms of growing up doing martial arts and watching this woman doing that was inspiring to me as a girl. But I mean, obviously you have Meryl Streep, everyone that I looked up to, but my mentor growing up was actually an actor named Gordon Pinsent, who's not a female, but he inspired me and taught me how to go about behaving on set. I was 12 when I started. So not necessarily a female, but I did have a mentor who guided me in every direction of the industry. And at age 88, I just worked with him for the first time after 22 years. So that was really important to me. But yeah, I don't
film she produced.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, I also think what you're saying, if I may infer, there were some female, in this case, TV shows when you were growing up, but not a whole lot. But each of you are now the ones that are having an influence and that people are looking up to. And I think you can see that when just within this same little comic book, not little, this comic book world, when you have both Batwoman and Supergirl female-led superhero shows, like that's a big thing. That is you guys having this influence on what's happening now. So you're it. Congratulations. You're the influence of other people.
Well, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, is the constant struggle being part of this industry and being relatable, and the idea that you realize that other people are watching what you're doing and that sort of thing, and you want to be somebody that people can see themselves in some aspect, and you're searching for humanity, and yet there's still that part of me that's like, this is happening to my body, and like the thing I said about when I was pregnant, and all the vulnerabilities. I'm afraid of the vulnerabilities because we live in a world where vulnerabilities aren't really shown very much anymore, and so in order, ironically, to sometimes get other jobs, you have to have no vulnerabilities, but in order to be relatable and enjoyable to real people, you have to look like a real person. So I know that sounds overly complicated, probably too intense, but I enjoy so much coming to conventions and meeting people and talking to people and going like, and they go, I really loved watching your show, and it was a great escape, but it was also made me feel like there's somebody that I can look to or that I know. And so I love that. And then at the same time, I still struggle with being real.
Well, you're also talking about the fact that like it's a risk, because when you do show that vulnerability, when it does come out, it's also a headline in some tabloid or some Twitter rag or something, so it's a risk to show that vulnerability. But hey, there's another question waiting to go.
Thank you.
2 hours later, we'll still be talking. You guys will be like, bring Michael back. I'm so tired.
Hey there, how's it going? That was a great point, by the way. Y'all paved the way for so many shows to come, and I love that. I've seen it develop over the years. But I was always a big Clark and Lana fan, and was that the plan going into filming, or did it change as time went on? Did you know that it was going to end up being morph into a Clark and Lois story? Or?
I don't know that I knew anything going in. Okay. I think that we didn't know this series would go as long as it did. I mean, 10 years is a long time. Yeah. And I don't know if they planned to bring Lois in from the start, but the longer you go in his story, you have to, that is where the story goes. That is the love story that, continues on in the comics. So I don't know if I ever thought about it, honestly. And the guys like Alan Miles, I don't think they were focused on that in the beginning. They were very much focused, and I've heard them talk about this a bit, the kind of weird, at the beginning it's weird because she's so young, but there's like a weird love triangle between Clark and Lex and Lana that, obviously morphs into a legitimate love triangle, but in the beginning it's like a strange like undertone that exists. And I know they've talked about how that was kind of their focus at that time.
Awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's the point of like when the show came out, it was the only one of its kind, so there was no guarantee this thing was going to stick around.
Absolutely. I mean, the fact that we were a hit was like amazing.
And then continue to be a hit, like so. Hi.
So I was just wondering.
Just lean into the mic a little bit more. Even more. Come on, come closer. Don't be the mic.
Hello, hi. Okay, so since Arrowverse does a lot of crossovers, when you guys were on the WB and the CW, were there any shows that you guys wanted to cross over with? Any genre, by the way.
If it had been possible, yeah.
What was on?
What was on? Gilmore Girls was on.
Yeah.
I would be like, yes! I don't.
That's all I remember being on at that time.
Supernatural started. Yeah, that would have made sense.
That would have been fun.
But then it would have been confusing.
Smallville.
I mean, at the time, like, Vancouver was, obviously WB and CW made a footprint in Vancouver, and now it's like CW town. Yeah. It's so surreal. But does that answer your question, or?
Thank you.
Thank you. Love Harry Potter.
Yes.
Having a moment.
It actually would have been kind of cool to cross Smallville with V, because they were shooting at the same time too. Because we only did one season and we were aliens, so I mean,
That could have worked.
it could have been interesting.
Hey, thinking outside the box.
Yeah, you got to.
Sold. We're greenlighting that one. Yeah. Hi.
Hi. So for me, one of the most beautifully twisted endings to a character on the show was actually Lana's, and how it was kind of to keep her and Clark apart, they had to create a situation where they physically could not be together. And then also on top of that, she kind of has her own powers at that point. So kind of what was that like for you, getting to have that be the conclusion to your character?
Honestly, it made me so happy. I know I've said this a million times, and I know it's a controversial storyline, but I loved it for her. I thought it was sad and tragic and awful, but also empowering. And for a female character to move from her life being focused on men to her life being focused on her own personal mission was a story of growth that I was happy to tell. I loved that she ultimately chose not to pursue a path to fix herself, that she saw that she could have more fulfillment helping people ultimately, and I love that. But I also think it's so sad that those two people never got a real shot, because they loved each other so deeply. So I liked it too.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi, y'all. So when they brought Lois onto the show, obviously that was kind of a turning point, because we do know Clark ends up with Lois, but from the beginning you guys had this whole verbal sparring match and everything, and you didn't get along. So what was that like, being able to hate each other but knowing that it was going to kind of end up perfect?
We never knew what was going to happen. I showed up and I thought I was doing 4 episodes. So I was like, well, can't really do anything wrong. I'm going to show up, work for a few months, and say, see ya. And that's, so it surprised me that I was coming back. And I just think they did a really nice job, selfishly for me, playing a female character that could kind of, she gets into a point of being in love and kind of hero worshiping and all that business. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, guys and girls, but it was really nice to kind of be sacrilegious about the whole thing and allow her to be independent and strong and sassy and say all the things you shouldn't say and be complicated and clumsy, and so I enjoyed very much the incarnation they gave me with her. Yeah,
Really well done. Good job.
Thank you.
Hi there. I was wondering, as Canadians all three, if you feel a Canadian sensibility affects your work, and also what your favorite Canadian project has been, past or present.
I'm sure we're all guilty of the sorry.
Yeah.
Every other word is sorry. Maybe not so much anymore, but. All right, that's it. Yeah. I'm definitely guilty of the sorry.
Yes, I think Canadian sensibility is infused in everything I do. I mean, for good and bad. I think our apologizing is an aspect of that is sometimes problematic. But also, I don't know, I work on a set right now that's all Canadians. I'm pretty sure. I can't think of an American off the top of my head. And it's such a, you can feel a difference, and I can't quantify it. But yeah, there's a kind of, this can sound really bad, but also I don't mean it as a bad thing. There's a lack of intense pride in the individual. It becomes more about the group. And that's something that I feel, and I think that helps me work in projects. And I guess favorite Canadian project is the one I'm working on right now. That one's easy for me, Burden of Truth.
Yeah, I remember when I came to the show, Tom said to me, he goes, you'd apologize if somebody else stepped on your foot, right? And it's true. It's a knee-jerk reaction that I have as a person. I think I don't know if it's also female. I walk into a room already feeling who and where and when who do I have to appease and how do I have to appease them? So I'm not sure if there's a bit of crossover there, but I know what you're saying as far as the individually based kind of feeling versus a whole cumulative effort. I also think that's just particular, not to every American out there, but it brought up in the industry. If you've been born and bred in this industry as an American actor, there's a whole other thing that comes with that kind of character. The positive about it is that they are fiercely unafraid to ask and claim their power, which I think is important, because it helps with even something as basic as like your negotiation. Like they just, hey, I deserve this, and they'll walk away from anything. And so there's something to be said for
That's what I'm
that.
saying. I think that it's an amazing.
So that is definitely something that we could take and use. And my favorite Canadian project so far was my doctor show, Saving Hope. Woo!
Yeah, Saving Hope!
I loved it. It was so much fun.
Ditto to all of that. My favorite Canadian series that I've worked on is probably Bitten. We did 3 seasons. It was an all-Canadian crew cast in my hometown. My character was actually in the books born and raised in my hometown on the same birthday that I was. So it was,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was really bizarre, but it was a great working environment, and to be able to go home and see my family was nice. And yeah, I do agree. I think there's a bit of, I don't know if it's a Canadian thing or a female thing. I think there's that weird...
There might be an overlap.
Might be an overlap. Do I deserve to be here? When will they realize I shouldn't be?
Yeah.
I think that's a constant, but it's something you work on as the years
Also,
go
all
by.
3 of those shows, we got to be our own leads, which was cool.
That's why we're like, that's my
They're our
favorite.
shows. Yeah. No, but there's something to be said for that, because you're playing the character that the audience sees and experiences that world through. So it's not necessarily saying, okay, I want the power to be the lead, but it's that you get to explore on a deeper level, at least for the first few years. Until you become the gray colors, as I like to call it. It was still good, but you get stuck in a box too. But for the most part, you get to have the most experiences, and that's what you're looking for when you're looking to create a character.
What about being on the top of the call sheet, like not just as a Canadian, not just as a woman, just as a person being on top of the call sheet? That's you're the captain of that ship in many ways. Was there a learning curve for you? What were some of the challenges or things that you kind of had to pick up on in that role?
Number 1 on the call sheet is an amazing responsibility. The first time I did it for a long time, Beauty and the Beast, I made a lot of mistakes. Anything you do ripples down. So you make something okay, you complain about a script, for instance, on set, it makes it okay for everyone you start to create riffs, even if it's innocent and even if it's just once. So it's a responsibility that I adore. I love working with younger actors, people who are, getting experience, especially female actors. And the learning curve is, like, when you screw up, there are visible, tangible effects. But I kind of love it. And I feel like I've gotten pretty good at it, and it's something I'm really proud of, my ability. I'm not the best actor in the world, but I'm really good at being number 1 on the call sheet.
Not only are you number 1, you're a producer on this show as well, so you have all these other responsibilities. You're kicking ass.
Thanks, Laura.
You're welcome.
Do you guys want to weigh in on that?
I think it's exactly the same thing. The one thing I was told when I started a series, which was Bitten as the lead, I actually spoke to the lead actress from the series Haven. How do you do this? How do I handle the hours? Everything? And she said, number 1 sets the tone. So you set the tone for the day, every day in the hair and makeup trailer. You have guest stars that come in, and as Canadians, I think, and just as people, you greet them. You make them feel comfortable, because it is terrifying coming in as a guest star for a day or a couple days because you don't feel like you belong, you're the new kid at school. So if number 1 on the call sheet's coming up to you and introducing themselves and asking if you want to chat or hang out or have questions, you're setting the tone. And if you're able to be light on set, treat everyone with respect and equality, especially with the crew, that's the most important part of being number 1. Everything else doesn't matter.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, the other thing that I enjoyed about it, for myself, you may not know it because of the character Lois, but I absolutely abhor conflict of any kind. And so when you're in a position of leadership, you are the one that is going to have to experience how to deal with that and how to make it not about you. And as Kristin said, like any amount of kind of real sharing about my emotions, and I'd burst into tears and I wouldn't be able to finish my sentence. And I had to work in a situation with certain individuals that we just did not see eye to eye. And so I had to try to figure out, how am I going to do this? How am I going to manage the situation? How am I going to make everybody feel like they're heard, but I completely disagree with this person's point of view. So for me, that was really good because I had to step outside of that part of myself, that aspect. And yeah, it gives you a chance to kind of stick up for the people that are kind of lost on the set, that get forgotten, that get pushed over, because you can see it everywhere. And I grew up in this business as a background performer, and that's where I started. And so I was always kind of making sure that the groups on my sets, I was like, hey, you know what? They need this, they need that. It was a lot of fun, because you could rally it, and actually, Tom said something interesting to me. He said a lot of people think, okay, if you're the lead of the show, that you get to be at the top and you get the best of everything. He goes, but actually you're the biggest support player of the entire show. You are there to support the show and support the other actors so that you create a really, really great experience and you create a good story. So I thought that was an interesting kind of opposite way of viewing it, from the inside.
Well, being a leader is not about being the boss. It's about, having a team, So, hi.
Hi. For Laura and Erica, if y'all haven't had a chance yet to give Tom a hard time for putting on some super suit before he did, I hope you get to over the weekend. And my question for, my question for Kristin is, there's a lot of talk about how busy Tom was in the first season, but you had to balance filming Edgemont and Smallville. So I was just wondering if you could speak to how you did 5 seasons of 2 shows concurrently.
I would work on weekends on Edgemont, so I would finish sometimes I would have a 21-hour day essentially, but I would have very little time to sleep, and then I'd go and I'd work the weekend at the CBC building in Vancouver, and then I'd go back to work on Smallville. And luckily my schedule on Smallville wasn't crazy at the time, but that's kind of how I did it. We just figured out how, and oddly, Edgemont had priority over Smallville. They just found a way to, they just found a way to finagle it around so that I could make sure that I could do both of those things for the time that I did. It was a lot of work, but I was very young.
Thank you.
Probably needed less sleep back then, I'm guessing.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. Oh, and final question, coming through at the end. Hey, what's your question?
Big fan of you guys. I had my little celebrity crushes with you. At the risk of getting my wife a little bit jealous, but
don't make it weird, okay?
No.
All right. What's your question?
Just want to make everybody says, "Oh, I love this and I love that." Are there any maybe regrets of any projects that you've done in the past? It was like, oh man, I wish I could have done this better, or I wish I.
And you're ending this on a downer note. We were doing so well.
Hey, but it's something because nobody ever asked that, in my opinion. But
I don't know how these girls feel, but kind of women feel, but I think that it's going to be the same thing. All of us walk away thinking we could have done better, always. There's never a time we go home and go, God, I killed that. So there's constant regret. It's just a part of life.
With it, yeah.
But yeah, there are specific things with projects. Like I did a project called Partition, and I loved it, but I regret doing it. I regret playing like a Muslim Indian girl. I didn't have the awareness at the time, and we didn't have the conversation at the time, and I wish I hadn't done it. I loved the project, but it is something I regret.
Yeah, I mean, things are, again, we talk about social media and things being out there that stay out there forever. And now I look back at projects and choices I made in my 20s, and, it's been used, some of those, to hurt my kid, who's 20 now. And when he was in school, he got bullied about it a lot. But I tried to find a way to talk to him in such a manner that it's not that I'm being shamed for making choices of a kid who needed to, kind of find her way into the union and do these things and didn't quite see the ramifications of what those would be, because I don't like sending out that message, and it's never been healthy for me to feel shame about those things, but it does yeah, it has consequences and it's out there forever. And I remember talking to my kid about it, going, I'm so sorry that this has hurt you. But I made those choices and now I learn from them and I grow and I move on. And I'm not all of those things, but I certainly regret certain projects. Having the chance to do it again, unfortunately, given when I came up in the business, I'm sad to say it's not super supportive of the female kind of the whole thing that's going on, but that's the kind of the industry that I grew up in, and that's how I got my toehold in. And but I still want to tell that story, saying I don't feel bad about it. I'm just sorry that it gets used in a way that I wish it
hurt.
hadn't.
Yeah. To hurt your, like you were just doing work. You shouldn't have to be ashamed of that.
Yeah. Did you have anything you wanted to weigh in on?
Yeah, I won't name them.
Right. And the thing is
them. Everyone knows
on those too.
Exactly.
Paid their bills off of that, you know.
Any projects that I regret. I actually don't regret doing them because they taught me something. You know what I mean?
Right.
They taught me never to do that again. Unfortunately, it's out there for the world to see. But I think my biggest regrets are projects that either turned out well or not, but the people I worked with end up not being the greatest people to have in your life. I had a very recent experience where the project happened, it seemed great, and then the people turned. So you can't really control that, you know?
Right. Well, I did not regret doing this panel. I hope you guys didn't.
You guys might all need to have a drink after it. I don't know.
And I appreciate you being here. I want you to make a lot of noise for these very awesome people that we've had on panel. Give it up for Erica, Kristin, and Laura. Thank you guys so much for being here today.
Hi, this is Aaron Ashmore, and you are watching Fandom Spotlight. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe like now. Oh, and have fun and follow your fandom.